All right, guys, so the CPI inflation report just came out, and it's the biggest monthly increase of 2023. Check this out.
I'm going to get to Rick Santelli standing by at the CME in Chicago for the main event. Rick, the numbers, please.
Yes, the main event, the Consumer Price Index for the month of August. Headline expected up an aggressive 0.6, and the economists and analysts delivered up 0.6. Up 0.6. The last time we had up 0.6 on a month over month was going way back. You have to go all the way back to February of 2022 to find a bigger number. When it was up 0.7, actually in March it was up as well. So now if we consider that the high water mark here in 2005 was up 1.2, yes, we've made progress, but this follows up 0.2%. Strip out food and energy, up 0.3%. Year over year, up 3.7%. That is hotter than expected, hotter than the rearview mirror, and 3.7, the last time we were anywhere near there was up 4% in May. And if we look at year over year core, which in my opinion is probably the most important, 4.3%. Now this is interesting. It's down from 4.7, exactly as expected at 4.3, but once again, let's go through the litany here, okay? We haven't been below 4% in this metric going all the way back to May of 2021. Last year, over half were above 5%, so this is still quite sticky.
I think if the government were to be 100% honest, it would be a lot higher than that. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I don't know anybody in our area that isn't feeling crunch from this economy. My friends and I were talking, and a lot of them are saying that unfortunately, with things like the pandemic, inflation, the Fed, and their interest rates, it's a very sad time that we're living in. What do you guys think? So let's take a closer look at this August inflation report. So yeah, as you guys heard earlier, the US inflation accelerated in August for the second straight month, a lot to do with the rising gas prices. Core inflation, which strips out very conveniently volatile food and energy prices, continued to slow, so that counts as a win for the Fed since the main metric that they're using to decide on those interest rates. But I don't know, guys. It's just wild that they don't include the many things that we feel the most. Maybe it's because they don't want to increase the cost of living for those on government assistance / Social Security, SSI, SSDI, SNAP, maybe even EBT benefits. More on that and the news of the COLA increases later in this video. So just to give you guys a quick recap, the Consumer Price Index rose 3.7% in August from a year earlier, which is up from July's 3.2% rise. Now that is slightly hotter than the 3.6% annual rate that economists were expecting. And on a month-to-month basis, prices rose 0.6% in August compared to a 0.2% gain in July. Now this is the highest month-to-month increase that we've seen in over a year. By the way, if you guys haven't already, make sure to check out the description down below and go ahead and follow me on Twitter and on TikTok. Don't miss out on any of the updates that I share on those platforms. But when you guys look at the core inflation numbers, which is what the Fed actually is doing, inflation slowed to 4.3% from 4.7% for the 12 months that ended in August, which is its slowest pace since September 2021, and possibly an indication that the Federal Reserve's 11 rate hikes are actually working their way through the economy. Monthly core inflation rose by 0.3% in August. Now, this is a bit of a pickup for the first time since February. Gas prices were the largest contributor to the CPI going up again in August. In fact, gas price inflation accounted for more than half of this increase. The CPI's gasoline index jumped 10.6% in August from the prior month. This is up sharply from the 0.2% gain in July. Now, the overall energy index, which includes gasoline, it advanced 5.6% in August from July. There were also rising shelter costs like rent and utilities, and of course, rising mortgage rates that continue to feed into inflation. Now, President Biden's saying that he's still laser focused on cutting energy costs, but that's a whole other topic for another day. Global oil prices were affected by the OPEC plus nations that are cutting production and demand soaring, especially with the summer driving season. Gas prices usually fall in August as consumers start to drive a little bit less, kids go back to school, that kind of thing. People are doing a little bit less vacationing. But this year was a break from that pattern because of the cuts in OPEC oil production. So that made a notable increase in the gas prices. A deadly flood in Libya this week also disrupted oil exports, which will definitely push up prices at the pump. Of course, our thoughts and prayers go out to those flood victims that have lost their lives and family members that may have lost their lives in Libya. But last I checked, the national average of gasoline, regular gasoline, stood at $3.85 a gallon, at least according to the AAA. This is the highest level in 10 months. And gas prices are just one of the things that people notice when it comes to inflation. So more pain at the pump could also weigh in on customers, U.S. consumers' moods and sentiments. Now, according to the experts, if these energy prices keep going up, they could very well feed through the core and actually make the Fed's jobs even harder in terms of returning inflation back to its 2% target on a sustained basis. But fingers crossed, guys, as they're leaning very hard on the hopefully continued unwinding of some of the supply and even demand distortions that we've been seeing since the pandemic. Now, what does this mean for the Fed and their next rate hike meeting, right? Which is what, next week? So far, the expectation is that the Fed will still hold rates steady next week because of several factors poised to facilitate inflation slowdown, such as weaker consumer spending and a cooler U.S. job market. But they're not totally closing the door on another rate hike this year. Honestly, my eyes are definitely set on one more, at least after this next one. And that's what's really going to determine how far the Fed is actually going to be going with their rate hikes. Even the experts admit that the pickup in inflation may increase the chance of additional tightening before year end, as getting the inflation genie back in the bottle doesn't seem to appear as straightforward as some would have hoped. Financial markets see a 97% chance that the Fed will decide to pause in the next one, while the chances of another pause in November are lower at around 58%. Fed officials are still hopeful that they can pull off a so-called soft landing, meaning inflation slows down to the Fed's 2% target without a sharp rise in unemployment or a recession. But do you guys believe them? We're not really sure how much economic activity will slow because of the Fed's action and when they could begin to take hold, especially since the Fed rate hikes usually take a while before we actually see any kind of effect in the economy and people's consumer behavior. So a recent paper from the Chicago Fed argued that most of the effects from the Federal Reserve's rate increases have already passed through the economy, and that the current level of rates are enough to bring inflation back down to 2% by mid-2024 without a recession at all. But some central bankers actually think that the Fed is not done raising interest rates just yet. So the Federal Reserve Bank of Dallas president Lori Logan, she said last week that another skip could be an appropriate move when they meet later this month, but skipping does not imply stopping. Instead, she said that the further evaluation of the data and outlook in the coming months could confirm that they need to do more to extinguish the inflation. So make sure you guys are subscribed to the channel because I'm going to keep you guys updated on all of the developments as they unfold. Make sure to hit the like button if you guys found this information informative, and let's keep the conversation going in the comments, guys. Stay tuned for more financial updates, insights, and analysis here. By the way, if you want to learn how to make money from home, generate income, create a small home-based business, definitely let me know if you guys have an interest in that. Drop me some comments down below on that if you have an interest, and maybe I'll make some future content for you guys so that you can get going. Now, wage gains have definitely been greater than inflation in recent months. That restores a little bit of the pricing power that consumers lost as inflation spiked. Now, experts are also saying that overall, the big picture is that inflation is much lower overall than last year. The Fed rate hike action has had an impact. With that being said, they're not across the finish line just yet. Inflation is higher than it was throughout the 2010s. Not to mention, it's also well above the Federal Reserve's slated 2% target. And so that could very well mean that the Federal Reserve could look into more rate hikes. Maybe not necessarily in their next meeting, but certainly in the meeting after that. Now, the Fed raised rates from just above zero in early 2022 to their current range of 5.25% to 5.50%. Now, this is the highest that it's been since 2001. And because financial institutions use the benchmark U.S. interest rate to set their own interest rates, mortgage and credit card interest rates, they're also the highest that they've been in decades. Now, if inflation continues to cool down, then the Fed is more likely to stop raising interest rates for the time being. Now, this is something that investors and business leaders, they've wanted to see for a long time because they're worried that the steep increases in rates will actually cause a recession. But despite the Federal Reserve's moves intended to stem inflation by slowing down the economy, the job market has stayed tight and wages have continued to increase. I feel like our economy is just so messed up right now. Like, how strong could the US consumers be if they're expected to run out of money in October? You guys remember me talking about that in the previous video, right? So they're saying that the economy is resilient, but American consumers are definitely feeling a squeeze from the surge in gas prices, even if it's temporary, as well as the end of the 3-year pause in student loan repayments. Now, overall, the public still feels negative about the economy, and President Joe Biden's approval ratings on the topic remain pretty low. And this is partly because inflation was just so bad a year ago and it remains persistent today. It could very well be one of his biggest challenges heading into his re-election campaign. How many of y'all out here planning to vote for Biden? I was just curious. Now, if inflation isn't clearly on the decline, more rate hikes could follow before long. Now, that could send the cost of borrowing money even higher and weaken the economy even more. Now, as for Social Security and the COLA increase for 2024, the forecast for next year's Social Security increase, it rose to 3.2% from 3% after the government said that inflation ticked up again in August. That's less than half of the 4-decade high 8.7% COLA in 2023, but it's also higher than the 2.6% average over the past 20 years. As the Senior Citizens League pointed out, lower inflation is welcomed, but the harsh reality is that the amount that the COLA's increased benefits in most years is meager at best. Seniors, they haven't kept up, and inflation has only made it worse. To put it simply, COLA hasn't kept pace, and seniors were the only group that saw its share of poverty increase between 2020 and 2021. The Census Bureau also reported and confirmed that the older adult poverty rate jumped to 14.1% in 2022 from 9.5% in 2020 and 10.7% in 2021, after accounting for government cash and non-cash benefits, geography, taxes, and necessary expenses. Now, Social Security only replaces roughly 1/3 of a middle earner's average wages. And to make matters worse, 59% of older adults start Social Security benefits before reaching full retirement age, and they receive permanently reduced benefits. Basically, they get screwed from the point they start receiving those checks until the end of their time. Now, according to what I read, seniors, they haven't been able to recoup the losses that they incurred in the past 2 years when inflation reached a 40-year high. Inflation was so bad in 2021 and 2022 that the average Social Security benefit fell behind by $1,054, leaving 53% of retirees doubting that they will be able to cover or actually recover because household costs rose more than the dollar amounts of their COLAs. And so seniors also worry every single year about what they'll have left of their COLA increase after the Medicare Part B premiums are paid. More seniors are also paying taxes on Social Security. More than 1 in 5 Social Security beneficiaries, or 23%, said that they pay taxes on a portion of their benefits for the first time in the past tax season. This system is rigged, guys, and they expect the number of people who pay tax on a portion of their Social Security benefits to jump up even more as next tax season reflects the 8.7% COLA increase in 2023. They're painting us into a box here, folks. The next COLA will be announced in October, and it will be effective starting January 2024. So definitely something to keep an eye on for the next update. Sound off in the comments if you guys want me to talk more about Social Security and the Fed rate hike meeting that's coming up. I'd love to hear more from you guys. If you guys made it this far in the video, drop a quick like, show your support. Also subscribe to the channel. Hit the description down below and follow me on TikTok and Twitter, and I'll see you guys on the next one.